All right, welcome back. On today's show, we have Lizy Hoeffer. She is America's #1 lending agent. That's
Female loan officer, yes.
female loan
I
officer.
wish I'm going for #1. We'll see.
Okay, shooting for #1 with over $250 million in sales volume. So today, we're going to talk just a little bit about her story, customer service, kind of where you got to where you are today. And I'm just really excited about this conversation because, I don't know, it's something that this industry I'm not super familiar with. So I get to learn a little bit about it. So I guess we can start with that. Like, what is the difference between like a loan officer, like a mortgage lender? What's the nuance there?
Yeah, so a loan officer is typically just the person that's coordinating and structuring your deals. They're usually the liaison between the client and the underwriter and the bank. There's a lot of confusion between mortgage brokers and bankers. So a broker will connect with a variety of different companies to see who has the best price and then look at all their guidelines. But they're really they have another intermediary between them and the actual end servicer. So there's just a lot more people involved in that. Typically they have less cost, but less control.
Okay.
I work in a mortgage banking situation, so I underwrite loans to all of the agencies, so FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and whoever else is still hanging out there after this crazy economy.
Yeah.
But I just go directly to the agencies, and so
Okay.
I'm literally the middleman between the bank and the client.
Okay, so in the past, because I actually got my home loan through your old company, I think.
Yes.
Was that like a franchise type situation, or how does that
No,
work?
so we're all independent contractors, but we're W-2'd, so we're considered employees of the company. So I have run a book of business, so I have like all my past clients, I communicate with them, market to them. I've worked with them forever as well as their real estate agents. Mm-hmm. So whenever I change the bank that I, submit my funding through, it's just I'm changing banks. So
Okay.
I can't technically, I don't have ownership in it,
Mm-hmm.
but I own my database, I guess.
So your new company, is this 100% your own?
No. So I'm an executive there.
Okay.
So it's probably the closest thing that I've had to actual ownership. I made the decision because in banking, there can be so many different levels of management. Mm-hmm. And at my last company, they were amazing, and I'm really grateful that I worked there. But I just never found that the flow of information ever got where it needed to. And there were so many different people between the people who actually made decisions. And so getting things done efficiently, getting out new technology, being able to provide an experience that I wanted for my customers was really difficult.
So was that like the bloat of just like a large company, or was that something different?
I think that's just kind of the negative of having a big company, right?
Okay.
And it's one of the big fears that I've always had as I've grown my team. It's, when I was an individual loan officer, people could get me, and I pretty much worked around the clock.
Right.
And then when I had an assistant, if they couldn't get my assistant, they could still get me. And then as I've grown, look, if you need me, I will be available. My phone number is still available online, but as the company grows, it is a fear, right? It's not just you anymore. And I see that. And unless you're really aware of that, unless that's like one of your core values, I definitely see that stuff gets missed.
Yeah, it gets slipped definitely very quickly. And that's something that I noticed. So I obviously went through the whole process of purchasing a home through you, and the customer service was just amazing. Like, I know I've personally recommended your company to a few people because the customer service was so awesome. And that's partly why I'm excited about this conversation, to kind of delve into that, because that's something that I really focus on, is just like the level of service. And that's just something that I tend to think about a lot, the more and more. Like, I've owned my moving company now for just over 5 years. And that's really what differentiates a service, is those like little additional things that people don't think about. Mm-hmm. Like not only doing what people want, but like doing those little things that they could have never thought of. I went through the process and you asked like, when was my birthday? What's my favorite candy? That kind of stuff, where I was filling out, I was like, okay. But then on my birthday, I got like a little gift, mailed to me. I think it was like a cake or something like that.
Cupcakes, yes.
Cupcakes, yeah. And I was like, who does that? So that kind of stuff just really stands out. So I just want to learn a little bit more, like, when did you decide to start, doing those kinds of things? Or was that like natural for you to just kind of, do those little processes?
So I'm a people pleaser by birth. I'm not sure what makes a people pleaser, but I am one. And I found that there are so many parts of the process that I couldn't control, and it would drive me nuts. In fact, it'd keep me up at night. It made me sick. And I always just thought of, you know, if I was a client and things didn't go perfectly, or if like what would make me feel like I wasn't just like a number, right? Like just a stack of documents on people's desks. And I thought, well, first of all, they're not. They're actual humans, and after their transaction, I have to make them know that like they're still important to me, and just as important to me as the day that I was funding their loan.
Right.
So I started thinking about like birthdays and, you know, what happens in their events. And I am a big proponent that like if the world gives to you, you give to the world, and the world will always give back to you, you know? And so I always paid attention to life events, right? So like, how could I give back? These people like gave me everything. How do I give back? And that's just kind of how I look at it. It's the core value of everything we do. Like our number one is client first. And, because I find that when you're that way, people are more forgiving. Like I find myself to be in one of the most chaotic and stressful environments I've ever worked in, and I worked in the last recession. So like the fact that I'm saying that, I hope that holds some weight. But you know, I'm still putting myself in their place. Like there's loans I just haven't been able to fund, and I'm like, okay, if I was that client, what would have happened to me? Well, when I need a place to go, I'd want my money refunded to me, whatever I spent. I'd want to know what resources were available. I'd want somebody to be available to answer all my questions when they called. And so, you know, just being able to put yourself in that and have it be like so important to you, I think that's just the reason. I can't tell you why I'm that way. I'm sure it's my parents messed me up, but like, I'm just kidding. But I mean, you know, it's that important to me.
Yeah, and I mean, all those things that you listed, when you hear them, it's like, yeah, that's common sense. People, you know, want the assurance, they want a backup plan, but there's so many companies that just don't care or think about that, and their clients are just another number. You know, after the service is done, see you later, and then they're probably not going to get that customer next time. And
most people, I think the problem with, and it's not a problem, it's just the way that the world works, is people judge themselves based on their intentions, not the results. And so, you know, again, back to the turbulent times that we're in, it's not my fault that all of a sudden all the programs are gone, or that this down payment assistance program is gone, or that this jumbo financing changed. Like, I didn't make that decision. It's not because I didn't know how to do my job. And so instead of coming from my place, right, which is what most companies do, they're like, what, do you want us to go out of business? What, it's not my fault. I did everything I could. That never helps any situation, right? But people always want to defend themselves because they don't want to look bad. It's that fear of letting people down. It comes from the exact place of why I overdo it. It's that whole like, I didn't want to let you down piece. And so if you acknowledge that you did something wrong, or you acknowledge that, you know, they're more than just the client, then it implies that there's something wrong with you. And I think that just like, I mean, it's just like a big web of deeper psychological things.
right, well, yeah, it takes a lot of I don't know, internal strength to admit that you're wrong in any situation. And then if it's your business and you kind of link yourself to your business, it's even, you know, harder to, you know, your business is you.
But it's not about right or wrong. I mean,
Right.
all of that is super subjective anyway. It's about what is this person going through? Like, I have to tell you that. You know, I have to know that that's what it is. And so, like, whenever you have bad news, or even good news, right? Bottom line, even good news. Like, how would you feel if somebody said, oh yeah, your loan's approved, I need your documents next. Like, I need you to be here. Like, you're just like, oh, okay, this is like the most exciting time of my life.
Right, yeah.
I want you to be like, woo, you got your loan approved. Thank you so much. And acknowledge all of the things that you did to get your loan approved.
Exactly.
Right? I think people have this issue with them. You're never going to be the hero when you're in a business owner or you're the salesperson. You're just not. It always has to be your client. When you put yourself in the hero position is when you've completely lost sight of the clients are always first.
Right.
Like, they're the hero.
I think that was a good point to say, if I'm interpreting this right, to acknowledge the things that you did to make it happen, so the customer can see like, oh, you went above and beyond to solve this problem. And that's something that we do at my company pretty often too. You know, someone will call us and be like, "Hey, can I get a move done today?" And we'll be like, "Okay, let's call some guys and see if we can figure something out." And then if we can do it, we'll call back and say like, "Yeah, we called everyone. We can did it. We can do it. We figured it out, and we'll be there," or something like that. Like explaining what you did to make it happen. I think because most people don't run businesses and they don't understand like what goes into making something happen. So unless you explain it, people are just going to be like, okay, whatever.
I know. And if you're just like, yeah, no problem. Like they think it's just like, peanut butter jelly sandwich, like just expected,
Yeah. So are there any like particular customer service type things that you've done that worked especially well that you were just like, wow, I'll do that in everything I ever do?
Yeah, I think celebrating people on their birthdays is always really special because I think nowadays with social media, people just call it in. They're just like happy B-Day or HBD or whatever.
HBD, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, I didn't even get 3 words.
Yeah.
People stop calling. And so the fact that you can do something special for them on their birthday, because everyone wants to feel special on their birthday.
Yeah, that's smart.
I think that's always a really good thing. I'm pretty silly, so I just believe that the more that you can show yourself in the world and connect with people on a deep level, like one of my favorite interactions with you is when I first started my YouTube channel and you're like, oh, I saw that you were doing a YouTube channel. Let me know if you need anything. Mm-hmm. Like that for me, that is so special. Right? It's so special just as somebody that I have also recommended my clients use your moving service. So
I appreciate that.
It's just like that extra above and beyond. Mm-hmm. Like I'm like, oh, he doesn't just think I'm his loan officer. He wants to help me with my YouTube channel.
Right.
So I think that any time that you can stay in touch and have a focus on life events for your clients, you can think about that in a variety of capacities. It doesn't mm-hmm. have to mean like gifting for everything, but reaching out is so super important. So I would definitely say a consistent prospecting plan that pays attention to life events and then celebrating birthdays.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, to that point, I know that whenever I post something like celebratory on social media, there's always like the same like 5 to 10 people who will reach out and be like excited for me. And that stands out. That, that makes a big difference. And then there's those friends you have that won't acknowledge that kind of stuff. And it's for who knows, what reason. But to me, that's like exciting when I see someone else doing something that's like, getting them to the next level or, just producing something. I'm like, oh, heck yeah. Like, how can I help with that kind of thing? I mean,
it's hard.
Yeah, that's probably why both of us make content and, like doing this kind of stuff because you get emails like, oh, thank you so much. I was able to figure this out. And then like that makes it worth it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I will say that I have always admired you. I remember when we were doing your home loan and I'm like, wait, how many businesses do you own? Wait, I need to know more about your life. Like, tell me, when did you start? I mean, I've been blown away at the amount of success that you've been able to achieve. And you're so super humble, by the way. Let me just tell you. I know you're interviewing me, but I just want to give you some kudos.
No,
I think it's amazing.
That. Yeah, I know my loan documents were a bit chaos. Like my tax forms are like, this thick with all the different businesses and stuff like that. So yeah, you guys made it so easy though. I could not believe like going through, I was like, I can't believe it was that easy to like, because I was like 20 at the time when I purchased the house.
He's 20 and owns like a gazillion businesses, guys.
I was like 20 when I purchased the house and it was like 2 sit downs and I had the pre-approval lined up. I was like, that's easy. And then I bought my house from my landlord. And I got just like a crazy good deal because I bought it through him, didn't have to have like a real estate agent or anything like that. It was like so easy. And now my equity in the house, because values have just gone up like crazy. It's like one of the best financial decisions I've made at this point.
I know. And that's the wonderful thing about real estate is that, yes, we've had a crash and people have seen it, but it doesn't move like the stock market does. Mm-hmm. It's relatively stable. And if you own it for a long period of time, you can really make a lot of money.
Yeah, it's crazy like the amount of principal that goes through your payments, that's like laughable, but the amount of equity.
Well, here's what's cool about a mortgage. I think that, and I hope that this is not like too above, but so every year your money is actually worth less and less.
Right.
So whatever you borrow today will never be worth what it was the day that you close. It depreciates just like your car mm-hmm. does, except that your house, because it's secured to an asset, always appreciates, which is why people are willing to give such long mortgages.
Right.
Right? Because God forbid you default, it's in favor of the bank to hold that asset because it'll actually be worth more. And there's nothing, literally nothing else that you can buy as an investment that will appreciate and that you borrow to acquire it. I mean, it is just, it's so neat. I'm obviously very into like money concepts, but it's why I love mortgages so much. And especially now, inflation's typically somewhere between 2 and 3%. God knows what it's going to be now. But so if it's around like 2 to 3% and mortgages that you're getting out today are in the 3%, you're essentially not paying interest.
Yeah, free money.
I mean, that's so nuts. And people are like, well, it's not free money, but it is. It really is. And even if you're paying like double 30 years from now, like people who owned house for $60,000 and let's say they paid $180,000, you can't even really buy a house for $180,000 today.
Right.
I mean, and you would never, it's laughable to think you could get something for 60. And that same house that's maybe you paid 180 for is now worth 400 today.
Right.
I mean, it is just so bananas. So anyway, that was kind of like a black hole of that, but I just
we can get
love
technical.
that kind of stuff.
Well, and not only is it an appreciating asset, if it's an investment, it's a cash flow producing asset, which it makes it even more valuable if you're looking
Well,
at
if
that.
people understood cash flow, right? I know
Right.
all of our Airbnb friends are like dying right
Yeah.
now, which I feel for them.
Yeah, I had a guy on 2 weeks ago, and he said he had $2,000 worth of cancellations that week for his Airbnb. And March is the busiest month of the year in Arizona for Airbnb, so it's like...
My Airbnb people are here for another how extended period of time. They can't go back. And so I've just been cutting them a deal because what do you do?
You have a couple?
I have
Airbnb?
one. So I have one. And yeah, but here's the thing about investment properties. You always buy them based on cash flow. And when they're leveraged through a mortgage, you have to be prepared to make that mortgage payment. And if you aren't, that's when if you aren't prepared to make 2 mortgage payments, you shouldn't buy it. I don't care how much money you can make because no one could have foreseen coronavirus. And if you're stuck with 2 mortgage payments and that's going to be the thing that disrupts your whole family,
Right.
you shouldn't have bought it. I know, and I hate saying that because hindsight's always 20/20. But when I talk to people, I always ask them all of these questions, like, what kinds of reserves do you have? God forbid anything happens, and people always, I know we get those clients that are like, "Don't tell me what to do," and it's like, I'm here to advise you.
Yeah. So do you have other investment properties as well, or just that one Airbnb?
No, so funny enough, this was actually going to be the year that I started acquiring real estate. I am very into affordable housing, so I wanted to get into manufactured homes actually because there was just a shortage of housing. So I don't know what that looks like, but
It might be more needed now, the affordable end.
yeah, but I don't know. I gotta think about it.
Yeah, it's very uncertain.
It's very uncertain
Yeah.
at the moment, and so. I try to invest in things I know. So I have owned lots of investment properties with my husband, and we've sold most of them a couple years ago, and then just we're starting to get back into them. So we'll see what happens there. But I have a lot of different investments. So I have, I'm a big believer in royalties. So we have some land with mineral rights. I have a bunch of dividend-paying stocks. I have the one little rental.
So just trying to focus on multiple sources of income.
Multiple streams of income, yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I'm slowly working on more because I just was pounding such a focus on my personal businesses because I was like, well, yeah, I can go and buy, put money in a Roth IRA, but I'm going to return 10 times more if I put it in my business. So there's kind of that balance there, but,
Look, at the very beginning, everyone needs to focus on earned income.
Right.
Okay? And being an entrepreneur it's extra important because it's like flying an airplane. It takes literally double, triple the energy to get something off the ground. So yeah, it's better spent in your entrepreneurial efforts at first. But then once that's going, right, then it's like, well, how do I make my earned income earn income? And that's when the multiple streams come into play. And again, I know hindsight's 2020, but that's why it's so important in times like now. Right? My earned income is definitely going to take a hit, like 100%. In fact, all of my streams of income have taken a hit, all of them. But I'm grateful that I have multiple right? And I wasn't always like this. I come from a very humble background. My mom worked 2 jobs, literally one at the water mart. And I had a job as early as I could get one. I used to play in a mariachi band on the weekends. Like,
There you
I
go.
mean, I don't come from money and I didn't come from parents that had this education, but I've spent a lot of time learning about it and learning from other entrepreneurs and other investors and other successful people, right? So I say that to you from this position, coming from a position of like literally like negative. Like, I don't know, 10 years ago, I owed like $65,000.
Wow. So do you think not coming from like a super affluent background enabled you to get to, where you are now? Because I see that a lot of times, like a lot of my friends who, not all of them, but some of my friends who have, wealthier parents, they're just kind of more relaxed, like, whatever. But the more successful younger people that I know tend to not have, a background that, with rich parents or...
I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, we all have skeletons, right? We've all had adversity in our lives that we've overcome. I don't think that that's 100% the recipe, and I think that that's probably 1% of people who with adversity.
Yeah, that's true.
But I do think that there's a certain recipe for people with the right amount of grit and the right amount of optimism, right? But I would say primarily that I had all of those things. So I was a survivor. And I found myself in a position where I worked for a man who'd sold his company to JP Morgan Chase for $62 million.
Wow.
And he was the first person that I had ever met with any kind of real wealth. And, I remember just being like, okay, I'm in a lot of debt and I have never met anyone with any money. So here's my mess. Help me figure it out. And I remember at first he was like, oh my God, what did you do? He's like, why did you buy this house? And why did you buy this car? And who's helping you? And I'm like, I'm a 23-year-old. I make terrible decisions. I don't know. And so he's who I call my rich dad. So I love him to death. His name's Mel. And I mean, every year we go over my financial plan still to this day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good guy.
He's amazing. So I think I was just fortunate too. I had all the right ingredients, but then the right influence.
So what are some of like the key points that he gave you that like really hit home?
Budgeting was number one. One of the first things he ever said to me was, you need to sell your car. And I was like, what? How am I going to get to work? He's like, you don't need a car this expensive. He's like, who do you think you are? You're literally a 23-year-old with $65,000 in debt. And I was like, oh my God. So it was all about budgeting and priorities. And so he really helped me understand that I shouldn't be living off any more than 70% of my take-home income, which at the time, you guys, like I was like, well, how am I going to do that? Basically, I'm going to live on ramen noodles
Right.
or and I remember like that day I was like, well, I have to figure out how to make more money. Like bottom line. And I still ate ramen noodles. I'm not even kidding. I still had to eat ramen noodles, but I did figure out how to get a secondary source of income. So at the time I was his loan processor. I was like, well, what if I woke up at 7 a.m. to drive to Goodyear, literally from Tempe to Goodyear, to go to this BNI meeting and I can start generating business. And so I started doing like 1 to 2 loans a month for extra income. And then it helped me get out of a place of debt. But the first thing he said was live on a budget and then get rid of all of your high interest, unnecessary debt. And he literally told me to get rid of my car.
Wow. Well, the key point there is that you took the advice and you took the action because, I mean, I don't know how many people have reached out to me for advice and maybe 1 out of 10 actually, follow through with it. So there's a ton of credit to be given there to actually be like, oh, wow, there is a problem here. I need to figure out some solution.
Yeah, I always question people's motivation when they ask for help. It's like, are you asking for help because you want somebody to say you're doing a good job already, or because you really want their feedback?
Right.
Because if you ask me, I'm definitely going to give you real feedback, and I don't know that my delivery is the best, so I'm just going to tell you to be like, no, that sucks, don't do this, or that's smart, So I don't know. Or I also think that people hear the advice and they don't implement till it means something, right? So like all the people that I've talked to about budgeting, right? I know that it didn't mean anything until now, right?
Oh, right.
And
Until the times are iffy, yeah.
And that's like one of the things that my husband and I are working on a lot, right? Because my husband has also been a huge influence in my life when it comes to money. He's the one that introduced me to that Richest Man in Babylon book. He's just been a huge influence in my life with learning about dividend-paying stocks and cash flow. I mean, I went to my first Robert Kiyosaki seminars with him. So, I mean, I've had some really good influence, but we decided that we were going to do this, Facebook community to teach people about budgeting, about cash flow, about these things, and just for free, just for if you want the information, just so you know, because it wasn't relevant until now.
What's the name of that group?
Smart Steps. So it's so as I've grown up in the mortgage business, I started coining a term to walk people through their finances. So SMART stands for spending, making, assets, reductions in debt or returns, and then timing, right? And so we walk them through our SMART Steps budget and our Smart Steps investing.
Okay. So that's just on Facebook, Smart Steps.
It's
like
Smart
a group.
Steps. Private Facebook group.
So check that out if you're in debt.
Or if you just want to learn about money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing too. I feel like so many people not only don't understand money, but don't have like the respect for money. So that's something that I feel like I have such a high respect for like the dollar to where I don't want to waste it on anything because it's like it takes a lot of work to get that dollar. You know?
But that's because you've had to grind, and that's probably because at some point you lived without.
Yeah, I mean, my parents were the most frugal you could possibly be. Like, they started having some money when I was in like my late teens. My dad bought a bunch of really cheap real estate after like the crash in like 2008, and that's when they started having like some money. But before that, it was like, I didn't know what name brand food was. Yeah, I went to like 3 restaurants by the time I was like 18, like that kind of stuff, where I didn't go without, but there was no like, luxury kind of stuff. So I don't want to complain because I know that there's people way worse off, but I was...
No, but you gotta admit that there's a reason. Like, look, I'm not saying that your parents deprived you, but like there's a motivator behind that, right? Being like, hey, you know what, I'm just gonna earn as much money as it takes for me to have this be an option. I'm not saying you're doing it, but I mean...
Right. And
that would drive me.
Yeah. At the time, I would get frustrated because it was like anything I wanted, it was like, well, you got to buy it. But it put me in the situation where it was like, okay, if I want something, I have to work for that thing. But then, I ended up realizing like, I'd work and work and work for this thing, but then I'd have like this savings to buy something and be like, now I don't want to buy it because I had to work that hard, to get this amount of money. And then I ended up just saving it. And doing that actually allowed me to purchase this moving company because I just worked and worked and worked and saved up all my money. And by the time I was like 17, I had like $17,000 or $18,000 saved up. And that's when I went to college, did that for a year, dropped out, and then I moved to Arizona. And that's when I started my pool cleaning business. Once I started that, I was building it up slowly and working part-time at a moving company. And eventually, once my pool cleaning business was busy enough for me to sustain myself, I quit the moving company. And about 6 months later, the owner of the moving company approached me and asked if I wanted to purchase it. And then I ended up purchasing it, and that's this company that I now own. But none of that would have happened if I didn't save when I was like 14 years old. I'd be, 5 years behind still.
You'd be a lot more behind than 5. You know what's crazy about that entire story, though, is that there's so many people that I would have known that would have said, I'm going to make so much money because I'm going to buy the nicest, coolest stuff, right? Because that's the hierarchy of needs, right? It goes, I want cooler stuff. Then it's like, well, now I kind of want to get out of debt. And then it's like, well, now I want to amass wealth. And then it's like, I want to leave a legacy. Right. And so you just completely skip the whole
I was like, legacy.
You're like, that's it. I'm going straight to the top. That is super interesting. And I know, again, you're interviewing me, but that's just really interesting. Can I ask you a question about the name of your company?
Sure.
Because every time I refer you, people are like, why do I want a bunch of skinny wimps moving my... Why the name?
So this is actually a franchise. When I purchased it, it wasn't a franchise. It was a guy who had started this in California. He had 4 locations, and he named it Skinny Wimp Moving. So I purchased it from him. It became the first franchise of Skinny Wimp Moving. So I had no part in the name, but he came up with the name just to be like contrary to all the other. Yeah.
It did.
And I learned later, I don't know if you've read the book, The 22 Laws.
Beautiful
Yeah.
Laws of Marketing,
To
yeah.
go the converse, route of the authority or whatever. He did that. I don't think he knew that he was doing that, but, it worked for him.
No, it does. And it honestly, people remember it.
Right.
So, I mean, it's interesting. So I just curious about that.
Yeah. Have you read the book, Selling the Invisible?
No.
It's so good. It's about service business marketing. I just read it, or just finished it like last week. But they say in there not to name your business anything silly. So I thought that was interesting because the first time I've seen that. They recommend to name your business like ambiguous words that stand out but don't mean anything. And they used examples like
Google, Kleenex.
yeah, Google, Wells Fargo, just stuff like that.
No, it totally does. The only thing I will say about that is that it takes so much notoriety and so much production to give your business like a meaning.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that it can't be done. It clearly has. But, like Zappos, I think is like a perfect example. It stands for zapatos, which is shoes,
Right.
and they sell shoes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, makes sense.
It's like, I don't know. You just have to do so much. I'd rather just make it easier for people
Right.
to understand like what you do. Like people when they go leave Lizy alone and they see loan at the end of it, they're like, oh, she does loans.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's making it simple. I mean, if you read enough books, everything cancels out each other anyways.
It's called being a thought leader.
Especially in marketing. It's like one group says one thing that, works for everything. It all depends on, execution. But yeah, so, I mean, he thought of the name. It worked out because, I mean, we get calls all the time who are laughing about the name. They see it in like an index or, you're driving in the trucks. They're pointing at it, laughing.
No, they do. And trust me,
Yeah, so I think it worked to our advantage more than anything. We probably lost a few people who were like, I don't want the skinny
I mean,
guys.
nobody, I don't think people wouldn't do business with you because of that, truthfully, but I know that as I've referred it, people are like, wait, what?
Yeah, but maybe that pause is a good thing.
100%.
Because everything is so quick, like, you're scrolling through Instagram, you give it a quarter of a second. Like, maybe what is that? Works to the advantage. I don't know.
Yes. Well, what's crazy about that too is that, because mine's alliteration, but it also is triggering. It's meant to be triggering. So, like, of course, I don't want you to leave me alone. I want a loan.
Right.
Right. And so it takes people a minute before they actually get it. They're like, wait, what? And then they're like, oh, that's so funny.
Right, yeah, does the same thing. Yeah, I like the wordplay. Yeah, leave Lizy alone. So that's not only the tagline, that's like the name of your business as well?
No, I work for Cross Country Mortgage, but that's the only thing I brand.
Okay.
So, like, if you look at my stuff, like, I obviously for compliance reasons have to have all kinds of things out there. And I love my company. Like, I think Cross Country is literally one of the best companies ever. But when it comes to the brand, it's Lizy Hoeffer.
Right.
I mean, like, people aren't calling Cross Country yet.
Right. So when you transition over, does your whole team go with you, or how exactly does that work?
It's complicated because there's a lot of legalities behind that. So for me, I made the decision that I was going to move, and I kind of made it in this place where I was like, I'm going to have to build everything up from the ground up. So I was lucky that, I had built up enough goodwill and had a family-like environment where my team was like, wait, if you're leaving, I'm leaving. But I did tell them like 10 minutes before I actually quit.
Wow.
And, that's always very scary. But I just think that sometimes, at least for me, my principles have always mattered more than money. And I was just at a point where I was like, okay, I'm making a principal decision, and this probably means that I'm going to have to start from the ground up again.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of exciting, though.
Yeah, I mean...
Maybe not right now, in the last month.
And then now that I'm like, God, I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, first the computer shut down, a new company, and now I'm like, zombie apocalypse. I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah, so what has the effect been in like the last month?
People were really supportive. I feel very fortunate that I've had a lot of people really back me with the decision that I made to move. And so it's been really great. The last month of my life has quite possibly been the most stressful I've ever worked in. And it's just because of, what we're in. This might be the worst economy that we'll see in our lifetimes.
So is that because of fear of people purchasing homes, or just the general market, or why is it so difficult right now?
Friday, they announced 3 million Americans are out of work. The healthcare system is overrun. There's an uncertain amount of people that are still going to get sick, an uncertain amount of people that are going to die. I mean, it's like
Oh, it's chaos.
not great news, you know?
Yeah.
And you have the people that are like, this is, an exaggeration. And it's like, and then you have the people that it's like, stay in your house. So you don't even really know what to think right now. But having people be out of work for this length of time and the government having to take out this amount of debt to even just keep the country going.
Right.
I mean, we've never seen anything like it. And what's nuts is that people said, oh, you'll never see anything like the last thing. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Like, we're not going to see a housing crash like that because it'll be something completely different.
Right.
And
Yeah,
like,
who would
we
have
haven't
guessed this?
seen a virus like this, I think, since the Spanish flu.
Yeah, like 1918 or something like that.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah.
It's crazy.
Probably once in a lifetime kind of situation.
So is it just mentally taking a toll on you, like the uncertainty, or is the business like slowed down quite a bit?
Well, it's like quadruple the amount of work. So I have a number of people that call in every day with different scenarios now, like, oh, I just got furloughed. Oh, my hours just got reduced. Oh, I just lost my job. So it's constant. Like, I was up at 6:30 this morning, somebody who's sobbing. And I'm the one that answers the phone, so, I mean, that's just what it is. I didn't have to answer, so that's on me. But 6:30, because her husband just got furloughed, because they just said, hey, dental hygienist, it's not a function. It's not a necessary thing. You got to stay home.
Right.
So he will have a job, but we don't know for when.
Yeah.
And so now I can't use his income to qualify. I, had to get an aunt in a different state to agree to co-sign.
Oh, so this was someone who was applying for a loan.
They're already in contract.
Oh.
They're going to close. They've sold their house and now are going to be homeless with 2 babies.
Oh my gosh.
And first it was, hey, I'm getting furloughed for 2 weeks, but I'm going to use my vacation time, so we're good. Oh, now I'm not furloughed. Now I'm going for unemployment.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and this is what happened. So now I've not only restructured that loan once, but twice. And who knows if I'm gonna have a loan at all, because it closes at the end of April. Like, who knows? Do you know what I mean? Like, this stuff is more challenging than people understand. And so, like, I'll have to rework a loan like 2 or 3 times, in addition to guidelines changing, in addition to the, unbelievable amount of people who want to close early because they're so fearful. So, I have my team and myself, I don't think I've worked this hard ever.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you being here. That's crazy.
I know. Well, I was like, I thought about canceling, and I was like, no. Max is a past client. He always supports your business. Like, he's been so supportive of your YouTube channel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, everyone follow Lizy's YouTube channel. I'll link that below for being here. I appreciate that.
Yes. So I don't know. So it's not just fear. It's like real.
Yeah.
We gotta.
Yeah, I wouldn't even have thought of that, like the current situation affecting, someone on contract or something like that. Like, that's crazy.
The whole banking system is about to collapse, guys.
Wow.
Yes.
I mean, we've been slow, but we don't deal with that kind of chaos. Like, we've been like 25% slower than the same month last year, which sucks, but
then you'll have an influx. Once this is gone, there'll be an influx. Things will get more stable. And the one thing is that, with the economy growing at the rapid pace that it was growing, truthfully, you had some people that maybe shouldn't be entrepreneurs.
Right.
The last recession, I think, actually caused that because people couldn't find jobs. So everyone's like, I'm just going to work for myself. And now it's the small business owner is being impacted. So the ones that really shouldn't be small business owners will now be employees again.
That's interesting. Yeah, they say everyone's a genius in a bull market or something like that.
I know.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't think about the fact that, it was like, okay, I can't find a job, let me make a job kind of thing.
That's what happened, yeah.
But yeah, the small business owners are really the ones who are being hit. And I saw that like the average business has less than 30 days of liquidity. And that, I'm lucky to be open, but I'm in a position where my business has 0 debt, like all my trucks are paid off. The only debt I have is my mortgage, but I can cover that for years without having an issue. So I'm in a lucky position there, but it's just going to leave.
It's not a lucky position. Like, I love that you're fortunate and you're grateful, but these were all decisions you made because things can happen.
Right.
It's the same thing for me. When I try to educate people on budgeting and saving, and they look at me like I'm crazy. It's like, okay, well, because something that is out of your control is going to happen. And then what? Yeah, we're both in very lucky positions, but it's not because we haven't sacrificed to put ourselves there.
Right.
This doesn't come without a ton of sacrifice.
Is it discipline or is it fear? That's the question. Like, is it fear of I might lose everything, or is it the discipline of the day to day?
You and I are probably the most scared humans ever. Of course we're scared. I mean, look, you cannot have discipline without an underlying motivator.
Right.
And you're either motivated by fear of loss or, which I think is probably the number one driver for most entrepreneurs, or you're inspired by what could be, which is, I think, the key motivator to most inventors.
Right.
Right? Like a Steve
potential,
Jobs.
right.
I'm not a Steve Jobs. I work really hard, save all my money. I'm a Warren Buffett.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Which I think Warren Buffett has a better life than the Steve Jobs. He seems to have
Steve Jobs was bananas, so there's that. But I mean, Bill Gates is the same thing. I think Bill Gates has one of the most awesome lives ever.
Right.
But if you're inspired, right, those are the creators of the world, right?
Oh, he's so insanely inspired. Like, have you seen his? There's like a 3-part series just recently on Netflix where it's about what he's doing to like sanitize water. Bill
No,
Gates.
I should watch it.
It's so good. Like it's called Bill's Brain or something like that. But it interviews people that know him, and it kind of goes in depth about like just like his daily schedule and like just like how much he reads and like how curious he is and everything. It's really fascinating. Like, you know, someone had a story about how him and a group of friends were going to go bird watching the next day. He read 3 books the night before on birds so he could talk to the guide like in detail about certain facts about the birds that they're looking at. That like it's crazy the amount of curiosity like this guy worth $100 billion has.
And so you're one or two, right? I mean, Warren Buffett's like, I'm never going to spend a single dollar and do the same, dollar cost averaging for my entire life, and I'm never going to change. It's like, okay, cool.
Right.
Like, don't change, right? I'm more like that because I've never been super creative, I'm as creative as that YouTube channel gets, But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think you're either scared or you're inspired.
Yeah, I think a lot of what motivates me is just wanting to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday in just some way. So that's really what triggers the discipline for me, where it's like, I know I have to do this, this, and this, and this today. Otherwise, I'm going to feel like the day's not over. It's wasted. I wouldn't be better than I was yesterday. And that alone is satisfying enough to not want to like buy stuff or, like I've gone and bought like a fancy car and then I ended up selling it because I didn't want it. And
because once you had it, you're like, wait,
yeah,
that wasn't, it's funny. I got my first new car, like, I don't know, 2 months ago. I hadn't owned a new car. Every car I've always had has been gently used, which is whatever.
Right.
But it was my first new car, and I didn't even buy like a super fancy car, but I did. I got like an X3 BMW, which for me is like the fanciest car. And I enjoy it so much more now. But I don't think I would enjoy the car the way that I enjoy it now had I always had a new car, had I always done all these things, had I always...
Right.
And even though I could have, I was like, at the time, I had other priorities, like... making sure that we had a lot of money saved, making sure that we had multiple streams of income. Like that was more of a priority than driving a fancy car.
Right. You know what I did for a while? For the longest time, I drove this like piece of crap, like 2003 Hyundai. And I drove it to the point where like my employees were making fun of me for driving this car. Then I bought a super nice car, but I kept the really cheap one. And I would drive the cheap one like 4 days a week. So then when I drove the nice one, I'd like it and I'd have that perspective change. But then eventually the old car broke down. I got rid of it. I just had the nice one. And then quickly I was like, I don't want this car. And then I sold that one and I bought another super old car that's out front, like a 2005 for $2,000. And I don't care. Like nothing changes in my day based off of what I drive.
Well, it depends on how long you're in your car though. So
yeah,
I used to have a not great car, and my AC would always not work.
AC is a different story.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, Well, ask my husband because he's actually the reason that I ended up with a new car. So I was driving a Tiguan with the AC was like at maybe, I don't know, like 30%.
Oh, no. Yeah.
And it was so hot, and I would just drive with it, and I'd just be like, whatever. But it kept breaking down, and then one day he's like, enough, you're pregnant.
Yeah.
I need a reliable car. You can't
Yeah.
be stuck in the middle of nowhere. So then he got me a Buick, this little Encore. It was like the mini version of their car. And that thing made me miserable because I'm in my car all day long. It was like a tiny clown car. I was like this, constantly hitting my elbow.
Right.
I never felt more frustrated, and I was like, screw it. And I literally had been driving a car with crappy AC that didn't bother me as much. So I do think that some of it is how long you're in your vehicle, and then the other thing is like, your quality of life. But the perspective is if you always have nice things, then you always want nicer and nicer things.
Right.
If you wait till like, I have no debt on it, I don't owe anything on it, I can really enjoy it. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I did it. I bought the nice car cash. And before I bought it, I spent like probably close to 6 months just questioning like, okay, do I want this car because I want other people to see me in this car, or do I want it just to have something nice? And finally I was like, okay, I just want something nice. I bought it. I drove it for like a year and a half and then just sold it. But yeah, now, I mean, AC for me, I couldn't have one without AC, but as long as it's not,
AC, it was like 30%.
Spotty AC.
It was not great. I mean, I definitely had like all of the things closed so that the one AC.
The one jet, yeah. Yeah, I've been there before.
I don't know why I did that either. But in my head, it was still way more manageable than hitting my elbow every day on this Buick egg.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess it's all about what level of...
it's like what level of sacrifice.
Yeah, yeah. Because right now, like it's a Mercury Grand Marquis, so it's just like a big cruiser. It's so, like the seats are so comfortable. It's like sitting in a lazy boy.
And you like it,
Yeah,
right?
I like it.
Right,
Yeah.
but if, let's say, it had an uncomfortable seat...
Oh, yeah, no.
or like something happened, or like, honestly, look, my Tiguan didn't ever make me feel self-conscious. The egg, everyone would come, they'd be like, that's your car? Right? Because it's probably the reason that you got the fancier car, and you're like, wait, questioning, this was me every day. It's like, why are you driving the egg? And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know. It's like, I like the egg, but I hated it the whole time.
See, I think it's entertaining to just go so low, like so under what your means are, to where, well, I had like that nice car, and I found that like there was like some expectations. Yeah, people would be like, "Oh, that's cool," what does he do, kind of thing. But I didn't like that feeling. And then I got the cheap one, and people are like kind of poking fun at me, and I kind of like it. Like,
I like just being comfortable. I guess that's the thing. Like, look, I got the least expensive SUV for a luxury brand that there is because that's as much as I was willing to go.
hey,
Right, it has really nice AC. My seat is really comfortable. I haven't hit my elbow once.
all is good.
It has a sunroof, lots of sunshine. To me, that is like the nicest thing ever. I'm never gonna pay 6 figures for a car ever.
Right.
Like just won't
Insane.
happen.
Yeah. So my girlfriend recently started a house cleaning business back in September, and she's been building up a clientele. So I asked her if she had any questions that to ask you, and her number one question was, how do you not cry every day at the end of the day? Like just from like a stressful day. She's like, how do you just like go through a day and not like break down at the end of the day?
Well, I did spend lots of times crying. You have to decide at one point in time that your best is good enough.
Right.
Like if you're giving your best, it's at the end of the day, that's it. And once you can make peace with that, like, hey, I've done my best, then great. And the other thing is you have to have a way of letting people down that you feel confident with, right? So like I have employees now. I have 27 of them. And so on a given day, if I'm lucky, they only make one mistake.
Right.
That's 27 mistakes and not including the one that I'm going to make.
Right.
Right. So having a plan for how you manage that and handle it and still provide good customer service also really helped me. And then again, it depends on the reason you're crying, but also like being very fiscal, making sure that your budget is in line.
Oh, I make sure like she has a spreadsheet that she fills out at the
I
end.
figured you probably did. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, you got to just know that like it's hard to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
There is a lot of stress with it. And no amount of stressing is going to change that.
So something that she deals with that I've seen is she's like you, like she's a major people pleaser, and to the point where it'll be her own downfall. So like she'll be on a job, she'll quote someone, then mid-job she'll realize like this is way more than I thought it was going to be, but then she won't call and say like, hey, this is actually going to be more because of this, this, and this. She'll just finish it and then just be depressed that she worked for so long and made like no money because the job was so long.
Well, one thing that she can do, though, because here's the thing. I don't agree with ever changing your prices once you've quoted somebody. If you didn't quote appropriately, you have to learn from your mistakes. So she probably didn't ask for the square footage. She didn't ask about dogs. She didn't ask about all of the different intricacies. And when she got to the property, she should have completed it and then said, hey, I'd love to continue working with you now that I have a better understanding of the scope of work. This is going to be the cost going forward. And
just like move on with it, basically. Like, that's one day, let's figure out what happened.
But it's like, here's the thing. It's only a loss if you didn't learn something from it.
Right.
Like every mistake I've ever had, 100% my fault, but I can always take something out of it, right? Like the reason I have some of the best automation in my industry is because every time somebody made a mistake, I was like, could that be automated? Is that something that could be changed? How could we improve on that? How could we make sure every single time? And so for her, like if she didn't quote a job, that's on her, not the client.
Right.
I don't think you should go back and change that, right? Because it's not, again, they budget for that.
Right.
Right, and hired you based on that. And how would you feel if somebody said, you know what, it took me a little bit longer to make your food, so I'm now going to add $2 extra.
Right.
Right, so you just have to go, hey, this is what it is. And then don't say anything afterwards, because this is the hard thing for people pleasers, is that you want to keep talking. You want to make sure that the people are happy, so you just have to say, this is what it's going to be from now on, okay? Great. It was awesome doing business with you. And if they say, you know what, that's too expensive, and you're like, okay, I completely understand. Let me know if if you want other referrals, I'd be happy to refer you. And if it doesn't work out, here's my number. Right.
And I find that those people more often than not are like, okay, I'll use your service.
100%. Yeah, they know what the funny thing is I've actually had that specific thing happen to me with house cleaners. I have 2 dogs and I have 3 children, and they never ask those questions, right? But they, I'm like, well, here's my house, here's where I live, it's approximately, 2,800 square feet, like, you tell me, and they're like, oh, it's this price. And then they get there and they see all the windows and they see all of the animals and they see my children, and then every time. So like I always plan on paying them a little bit more than they've quoted, just primarily because I've been there. Right. But if they would just learn from what's causing them stress, like what is actually causing me stress? And look, people don't get upset unless you wait till the last minute to tell them things. Like they may be annoyed, they may be frustrated, but they never get like violently pissed off unless you've waited to the last minute to tell them something and then there's no possible solution.
Right. Yeah, it's just setting the, like you said, setting the expectation up front. And I think that's a really bad look to show up and then be like, oh, wow, I should have asked that question. Like, I definitely don't want to be in that situation. Moving is the same way because we have no idea how long a job's going to be until we're done with it. And unless someone goes and does like an in-home estimate, takes in like a thorough inventory, we have no clue. So, I mean, the way we deal with that is we say we have a flat hourly rate, includes everything. And basically, we're efficient. We'll work till the job is done, but this is our hourly rate. If they want a ballpark figure, we'll say, typically a 3-bedroom home is 5 to 6 hours, but we've had them go 10 hours. We've had them go 2 hours. So it all depends on how much you want us to do, how much you have.
And you learned that based on mistakes you had made when somebody pressured you for an estimate.
Right. Yeah, we never give like a firm estimate.
You now never do.
Right.
But I know, just being an entrepreneur, that there were times that you did, and you're like, man, I regret this.
Yeah, I know that there was at least one time where someone claimed they got a firm price, and it was just a nightmare, and that was enough where I'm not sure if someone did or not, but that was enough for me to be like, never say that again.
Exactly, right. Yeah. But every time we have like a hard no, like in a business, if there's a hard, this is the policy, it's because something happened that caused the owner that much pain.
Yeah, that much grief. Yeah, I don't want to be getting a call at 10 p.m. because someone's not paying their whatever $1,500 bill or something like that. Yeah, but luckily that doesn't happen anymore, luckily. But yeah, it's those little things that I guess you really, unless you have someone saying like, hey, this is something to think about, you really can't think about unless you've done, been in business for a certain amount of time. Just those little things that you like kind of pick up on. So onto I want to talk a little bit about delegation. And actually, first, let's talk about automation, because you said that you try to automate just everything that can be automated. Do you have like a programmer on staff?
Salesforce. I do have a programmer on staff.
So through Salesforce, they'll like figure it out for you, or?
I use Salesforce, that's the platform, and I have a programmer on staff.
Oh, and they use Salesforce to automate things. So what are some examples of things that you've automated?
Like every workflow, so every time, so in order to deliver a consistent service, you have to make sure that like certain deliverables are met. So all my needs lists are sent out, all the reminders are sent out. When a contract gets opened, all the same information is relayed with all the same due dates. It's backfired now in this marketplace. So like one way that automation is not amazing. So we keep asking agents about ordering their appraisals. It's part of our automation in our process until we get an order date completed for an appraisal. Well, now in this marketplace, because appraisers don't want to go out to a property,
Right.
It's taking days to get them to accept an order, but the automation's still reminding them.
Every day they're getting an email.
Yeah, so I'm like, but I don't want to shut it off because
Right.
this is temporary, I believe. So it's an interesting thing. So, but I did that originally because people would forget to go, hey, can I order your appraisal?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So is there any like one thing that you like automated and just saved you like so much time that it was insane?
Just being able to do the follow-ups with people, right? Just having a workflow for sales. Salesforce is by far the best investment I've made in my business.
So I'm not super familiar with Salesforce.
So it's a client database and management system. So it's essentially like I don't know what task management, if you've used Asana or you've used...
We have like this online checklist program called Remember the Milk that basically is like reoccurring tasks and stuff like that.
So it's like that, but then it's also like a combination of that, Slack, constant contact. So it's just an interface. And now that we've all been working remotely, it's awesome because everything's in one spot.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I recently learned how to learned how to program Python just because I was like interested in learning how like certain programs work. And I made this small program that allowed me to scrape addresses from Zillow and just put them on a spreadsheet, like the last like 1,000 houses listed for sale, so we can mail postcards out to them. And it went from like 30 hours of work to like 10 minutes from, one click. Done.
I know. And so it's like...
crazy.
Well, think about how long it takes to generate an email.
Right.
And like if you maybe it's 5 minutes, but if you have 15 clients that you're talking to, 5 minutes adds up.
Right. Well, and like here we book the jobs for 12 different moving companies, like skinny wet moving companies, throughout the franchise system. So we're talking to every single customer. I mean, we have it fairly well automated, but yeah, that could add up if every single thing had to be manually done, and I can't imagine. So with delegation, what was the first like position that you hired out to delegate?
So I actually hired 2 assistants kind of at the same time. The very first thing was email and checking my voicemails. Those things take so long. And
personal email or sales emails, like inbound?
I only have one email.
Okay.
Yeah, so just text my email. And then, so that was the first thing. And then they delegated anything like I needed to do personally, because it's hard to train skilled work, like technical work in mortgages. So it was whatever I didn't need to train somebody to do, that's everything I delegated first.
Interesting. So with like a personal assistant, do you mean like you were having them like run errands for you, like personal
Everything.
stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Errands, book my doctor's appointments, like drive me there so I could still be working.
That was your first hire? That's interesting.
Yeah, because I wanted to take off. Because look, as an entrepreneur, you're like 5 of your best employees in one.
Right.
So the more that you can actually do, the better and more efficient and more controllable you'll be.
That's really interesting because I I hate doing like errands and stuff like that. That's my least favorite thing to do. And I try to, delegate it whenever, but I don't have like one specific person to do all those things. So I've thought like so many times just to hire someone to do all that kind of stuff for me. But I would have never thought to do that as my first hire. That's really interesting.
It's just what I did first. And then my second hire was like the tasks that took the least amount of skill to train.
Mm-hmm. That's what kind of how I recommend to people is to delegate the most boring, time-consuming thing first. Like for me, it was taking inbound calls, which is something that I didn't like to do.
You know what's crazy about that? So inbound calls are sales calls. So I think that that's like high green. So like high income generating. So those are typically the things I would never delegate.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, but
you would delegate last.
I would delegate last. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Yeah, my first hire. Well, I mean, I was sitting there for weeks, like, okay, do this on that call. So to the point where they were like thinking the same way that I did, but that care will never be as much as I would if I was on the phone. Mm-hmm. So you still all the inbound calls?
Mm-mm. No, now I have a full time sales trainer.
Okay.
But I did for a very long time.
Very long time.
And now I still take all of the prospecting calls, so all of the generating lead business is all me, and all the problems are all me.
Yeah.
I'm customer service, so now I don't do anything fun.
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding. But I could definitely delegate all the problems. Like, it's definitely doable. The reason I don't is because at the end of the day, people do business because I ensured them that they would. I promised their real estate agent, I promised them. And do you really want to hear from someone else other than the person who made the promise?
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, your name is attached directly to it.
And that's what I just think it's an integrity thing. So that's just, again,
right.
Deep-rooted personal issues,
Yikes. Yeah, with the putting out fires, like that's something that like I wanted just to focus on the positives as much as I could, because if I'm just taking those negative calls, I'm going to be like drained. And I think that's something that other people do better than me, because I'm not as they're not as emotionally attached to fixing a problem as I am. Yeah. Where they'll, if they're hired to be like, go above and beyond and fix this problem.
Yes and no. Here's the one thing I will tell you, though, about it, because this is my job. And when I was joking about it, I don't do any of the fun stuff. Feedback is always important.
Right.
100%, but it's never personal.
Interesting.
And if you, really can understand that, really get it, then it's all fixable. It's all fixable. Because when something happens, all of this, I could be a puddle. In fact, I actually talked to someone the other day. I was like, God, I think this is the kind of economy that makes people want to commit suicide. And I was meaning that in all seriousness.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I could be a puddle right now, except that it doesn't mean that this happens makes me a bad person. I didn't all of a sudden start sucking. Right. I didn't all of a sudden start doing all these things. Is it important? Absolutely. Is it urgent? Yes. Can I back away from it? No. But it's not Lizy the human is now all of these things that's wrong with her business. Right.
That's interesting. Yeah, I definitely like the way that you look at these problem solving, especially the customer service. Like I said earlier, that was honestly one of the best customer service experiences that I've had. And I don't know if anyone that I've recommended has gone through and purchased anything, but I definitely will continue to in the future. And I really appreciate it. And also, I appreciate you coming in and taking time out of your busy schedule in this chaos and talking with me. You want to plug your YouTube channel and social media?
Yeah, guys, you can find me anywhere that you consume your social media. My name is spelled Lizy, and my last name HOEFF as in Frankie R. And that's what it is on YouTube, what it is on Instagram, what it is on Facebook. So I look forward to connecting with you guys on there.
Yeah. So I'll link all that in the description below. Go ahead and follow her, check out her content. She definitely is a force in this business. And thanks for watching. Awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was great.